All right, here we go. This is session number 95 of Kevin Reads A Course in Miracles. We are in chapter 13, which is entitled The Guiltless World, and we are in section 2, which is entitled The Guiltless Son of God. And this is on page 239 in the text. Just a little preface, a little reminder that when Jesus uses the word you, and Helen Schuckman and Ken Wapnick, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, were editing the book and they put the you in italics. When you see that, Jesus is speaking to that part of the mind that will decide. Ego, Holy Spirit, the thought of separation or the memory of oneness. Okay? The conflict, the memory of God. Right. And every moment of the day, that choice is being made. Okay? So, but Jesus is always appealing to that part of the mind. Alrighty, here we go. The ultimate purpose of projection is always to get rid of guilt. Yet, characteristically, the ego attempts to get rid of guilt from its viewpoint only. For much as the ego wants to retain guilt, you find it intolerable, since guilt stands in the way of your remembering God, whose pull is so strong that you cannot resist it. On this issue, then, the deepest split of all occurs. For if you are to retain guilt, as the ego insists, you cannot be you. Only by persuading you that it is you could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind. Right? The ego realizes we don't get rid of guilt. It just tells us you'll get rid of it by projecting it. Find somebody to dump it on. And if you can't, you can hate yourself too. You can project guilt onto yourself. Oh, I'm the worst. Whatever. All right? I'm not enough. I'm not too, this and that. You can project that onto yourself. All right? Ego doesn't care as long as the guilt gets projected, because it knows it doesn't work, and the ego, the guilt is going to remain. Right? And Jesus will tell us over and over again that this guilt stands in the way of your remembering God. All right? Because in fact, the guilt is it's derived from the belief that I separated from God. So if I keep reinforcing the guilt, right, which is what the ego wants me to do, right, if I keep reinforcing it, then it becomes nigh on impossible to remember God, right, until it just becomes so intolerable that I decide, wait a second, there must be a better way. There has to be a better way to see these things, to see the world, to see my life, to see myself. Right? And he's telling us that the memory of God is so strong that you can't resist it. Sooner or later, you're going to remember. Right? Jesus always says, why wait? Why wait? It's guaranteed you will remember God. You will remember who you are. Right? And the ego does its damnedest, as they say, to make sure that doesn't happen. Because in the memory of who we are, the ego vanishes. Right? There's no need for the belief in separation. Because you remember, oh, I'm one with God. So on this issue then, the deepest split occurs. For if you are to retain guilt, as the ego insists, so if you're to keep guilt, you cannot be you. You cannot realize who you are. You must be something else. You must be believing that I'm something else. Okay? It doesn't make you bad, it just makes you, miserable, as we say. So you want to remove the blocks to the awareness of who you are as soon as you can. Right? Only by persuading you that this is you, right, could the ego possibly induce you to project guilt and thereby keep it in your mind. So only by trying to convince me that I am this body. Right? I am this body in this lifetime called Kevin. Right? And this is what I do, this is my history. All right? All right? So the ego wants to convince me that this is who I am. All right? So I need to keep projecting to get rid of that guilt. Because in order to be this, I have to believe I separated from my source. Paragraph 2. Yet consider how strange a solution the ego's arrangement is. You project guilt to get rid of it, but you are actually merely concealing it. You do experience the guilt, but you have no idea why. On the contrary, you associate it with a weird assortment of ego ideals, which the ego claims you have failed. You have no idea that you are failing the Son of God by seeing him as guilty. Believing you are no longer you, you do not realize that you are failing yourself. Right? Jesus is exposing the ego's lie that we separated from God, and this is who I am, and you're guilty. Right? That's the ego's lie. Right? And it's a strange solution. You project guilt to get rid of it. Right? But you know you're not getting rid of it. You're just concealing it. Right? You're pushing it down. You're hiding it. You still experience the guilt, but you don't know why. And on the contrary, you associate it with a weird assortment of ego ideals. Oh, I should have done this, I could have done that, but I didn't. And, you could look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I'm failing. I don't look like the modern day person. I'm this, I'm that, I'm too much this, I'm too little that, right? I'm not a billionaire, I don't own large companies, I'm not a successful CEO, right? I haven't won a Nobel Prize in years, or not at all. All right, so there's all kinds of ways you could look on yourself as say, I'm a failure. I'm guilty of not being good enough, not achieving, especially in this Western world where we live. Right? You have to achieve. Right? I remember one time I was very upset, 1989, in massage school in Gainesville, Florida. And I was talking to one of the instructors who would also do some counseling for people, and he asked me this great question. I never forgot it. I'm just saying this and that, and how I feel and all. And he asked me, he says, well, what is it you think you have to do? That was a good question. What is it you think you have to do? And then fast forward to like 1999, 10 years later, I'm up in Roscoe, New York, on Lake Tanana, and we're at the foundation for A Course in Miracles. And one of the people who worked there was telling me of an incident which she had with Dr. Wapnick. And they were getting ready for some big event, and she was nervous, and she said, and Dr. Wapnick came into the office, and she said, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I don't have enough time, I got to do this, I got to do that. And he just put his hand on her shoulder, and he said, the only thing you have to do is accept the atonement for yourself. Right? So that was another step into the, what is it you have to do? Right? All you have to do is accept the fact that you never separated from God. You are totally guiltless. You are totally innocent. Right? So he says, you associate that you still feel the guilt, even though you projected it, and you make up all kinds of reasons why you're guilty, why there's something wrong with you. Right? And because the ego claims that you have failed. Right? You have no idea that you are failing the Son of God by seeing him as guilty. Believing you are no longer you, believing that you're no longer the Son of God, you do not realize that you're failing yourself. Right? This is where the guilt comes from. You believe you're not who you really are. You believe you destroyed that. Right? Paragraph 3. The darkest of your hidden cornerstones holds your belief in guilt from your awareness. For in that dark and secret place is the realization that you have betrayed God's Son by condemning him to death. You do not even suspect this murderous but insane idea lies hidden there. For the ego's destructive urge is so intense that nothing short of the crucifixion of God's Son can ultimately satisfy it. It does not know who the Son of God is because it is blind. Yet let it perceive guiltlessness anywhere, and it will try to destroy it because it is afraid. So the ego doesn't know anything about the Son of God, just knows that if it sees guiltlessness anywhere, it has to destroy it. Okay? And this destructive urge of the ego is very intense. Right? It's so intense, Jesus says, that nothing short of the crucifixion of God's Son is going to satisfy it. Right? That's how intense the ego wants to stay alive. And all it knows is that innocence threatens its existence. So it needs to destroy it. And we have some, salient examples in history, Jesus being one of them. Right? I mean, even Pontius Pilate had to admit, I don't see what the guy did, He was just innocent, and they couldn't stand the innocence. And Socrates, right? Socrates was speaking the truth. Right? That's just another word for innocence. He was talking about the innocence. He had to be removed. He had to be destroyed. Right? And there's plenty of, plenty of instances of that along the way that, I haven't come across in history, but nonetheless, I'm quite sure they are there, right? Because the innocence threatens the ego. Innocence threatens the ego society in which we live. So, you got to watch out. Alrighty then. So from the darkest of your hidden cornerstones, right, the darkest of your hidden cornerstones holds the belief in guilt in your awareness. Because in that secret place, right, is the realization that you have betrayed God's Son by condemning him to death. Right? That's the deep, deep secret that you have, that you separated. You destroyed heaven. You destroyed the Son of God. Because of your insistence on separation. All right. So, my little kitty just joined me. Had to make room for her. So you do not even suspect this murderous but insane idea lies hidden there. For the ego's destructive urge is so intense that nothing short of crucifixion of God's Son can satisfy it. We don't even know this intense urge is there. Okay, it's just that we have to continually deny that, oh, that's who I am. I'm one with God. We continually deny it, and that's that murderous urge that the ego has to protect itself. Right? He says you don't even suspect that it's there. Right? So paragraph 4. Much of the ego's strange behavior is directly attributable to its definition of guilt. To the ego, the guiltless are guilty. Those who do not attack are its enemies, because by not valuing its interpretation of salvation, they are in an excellent position to let it go. They have approached the darkest and deepest cornerstone in the ego's foundation, and while the ego can withstand your raising all else to question, right, it guards this one secret with its life. For its existence depends on keeping this secret. So it is this secret that we must look upon, for the ego cannot protect you against the truth. And in its presence, the ego is dispelled. Right? That's why the ego constantly drags us away when we get close to the truth. And it's a big fear. Later on in the book, Jesus will say this again by saying that the closer you get to truth, the fear will come up like the fear of death. Right? Like you're going to be obliterated. If you remember who you are, you're going to die. You're going to get killed if you reach out and become one with God. So to the ego, the guiltless are guilty. Right? Those who do not attack are its enemies. So the peacemakers are the enemy of the ego. Okay. Because the peacemakers get close enough to the truth that they're liable to just say, oh, this ego is just so silly. And they let it go. Right? They have approached the darkest and deepest cornerstones of the ego's foundation. And while the ego can withstand your raising all else to question, it guards this one secret with its life. For its existence depends on keeping this secret. The ego's existence depends on me keeping this secret that I destroyed heaven. I turned my back on the oneness. I denied who I was. Right? I sought for individuality. I destroyed the oneness. That's that deep, dark secret. Right? So it is this secret that we must look upon. We have to look. Get in touch with that idea that says, I separated from God. Okay? He says we have to look upon it, because the ego cannot protect you against the truth. And in its presence, the ego is dispelled. All right, so that's why we have to look. We have to look at what we believe about ourselves and about everybody else. All right? If I'm projecting guilt, I have to look at that and say, wait a second. I have to question that. Because the ego can't stop the truth. Right? It can only distract me from going to my mind where the memory of the truth resides. Right? So it is this secret that we must look upon, that I destroyed heaven. I separated from God. And that's why Jesus keeps reiterating the atonement principle, which says, never happened. You never separated from God. You are as you were created. Right? You are innocent and free. You are at home in God, dreaming of exile. Okay? And it's on this deep, dark secret that we have to look at. Right? We can't just ignore it, pretend it's not there, and pretend that we are something else. Can't keep pretending that I'm just this figure in the dream, strutting and fretting my hour upon the stage, as it were. All right. Paragraph 4. Much of the ego's strange behavior is directly attributable to its definition of guilt. To the ego, the guiltless are guilty. So that generates the ego's strange behavior. The ego has to, you'll see people, they put them up. Oh, they're so great, they're so wonderful. Boom, sooner or later, there's a reason to drag them down. Oh, they're not so great. Look at them. It goes on and on like that. All righty then. So we have to look at that deep, dark secret that I destroyed heaven. I killed the Son of God. Okay? So, paragraph 5. In the calm light of truth, let us recognize that you believe you have crucified God's Son. You have not admitted to this terrible secret because you would still wish to crucify him if you could find him. Yet the wish has hidden from him. Pardon me. I'm losing the light of day here. Yet the wish has hidden him from you because it is very fearful. And so you are afraid to find him. You have handled this wish to kill yourself by not knowing who you are and identifying with something else. You have projected guilt blindly and indiscriminately, but you have not uncovered its source, for the ego does want to kill you. And if you identify with it, you must believe its goal is yours. So the ego is not looking to kill me, Kevin. The ego is looking to kill you, the decision maker. Right? It's looking to just put you out of commission. Right? So that you never make the choice. Okay? So he says, look, in the calm light of truth. He says, don't get upset about it, just look at it. That you believe you have crucified God's Son. You believe you separated from God. Right? Thereby And Jesus says there is no life outside of heaven. All right? So you took the Son of God and put him outside of heaven, where there's no life, all right? Where he's dead. All right? And Jesus will use the imagery and the metaphor of the crucifixion throughout the book, because this is written in Christian terms. All right? So you have not admitted to this terrible secret, right? Because you still want to do it. You still want to separate. Right? You still think there's something worthwhile here. There's still something I can achieve here. Right? There's still something valuable in being this body. Okay? So you still haven't admitted to this terrible secret, because you still want to separate. You still want to kill the Son of God, if you could find him. If you could find the innocence, you would still want to destroy it, because you're afraid it's going to destroy you. You as the ego. Right? Yet the wish has hidden him from you, because it is very fearful. And so you are afraid to find him. Right? It's a very fearful idea. So you're afraid to find him. You have handled this wish to kill yourself by not knowing who you are and identifying with something else. That's how we handle the wish to separate, by making believe we're somebody else. That's how we handle the desire to destroy the oneness, by making believe we're somebody else, we're something else. You have projected guilt blindly and indiscriminately, but you have not uncovered the source. You have not uncovered its source. The source of guilt is the belief that I separated from God. In other words, I killed the Son of God. That's the belief. That's the source of guilt. For the ego does want to kill you, and if you identify with it, you must believe its goal is yours. So if I identify with the ego, I must believe that I want to continually destroy the oneness. I want to continually decide for separation. Let me put it that way. Because if I align myself with the ego, if I identify with it, I must believe that I have the same goal as the ego. Destroy the oneness, dissociate from it, forget who you are. Right? That dissociation is, I guess you could say, that's the killing of the italicized you, the decision maker. Right? Although you haven't killed the decision maker, you just forgot. You dissociated from the decision maker. You forgot. But we're trying to take steps to remember who we are. Right? Paragraph 6. I have said that the crucifixion is the symbol of the ego. When it was confronted with the real guiltlessness of God's Son, it did attempt to kill him. And the reason it gave was that guiltlessness is blasphemous to God. To the ego is God. And guiltlessness must be interpreted as the final guilt that fully justifies murder. You do not yet understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from this interpretation. But if you will consider your reactions to it, you will become increasingly convinced that this is so. So let's just start with all right, it says the crucifixion is the symbol of the ego. And if we go back to the New Testament, you'll remember that the big sin, the big crime that Jesus was accused of was blasphemy. Right? Blasphemy. You know, saying that he could do the things that God did. Right? When I believe he told a paralyzed person, your sins are forgiven. Your sins are forgiven. Whoa, what are you doing? Only God can forgive sins, and you have to go through certain rituals to get it done. Right? And then another point, he said, something about destroying the temple. I will rebuild it in 3 days. Right? What? Only God can do that. It's blasphemy. Right? But here he's borrowing on that, and he said, when the ego was confronted with the real guiltlessness of God's Son, it did attempt to kill him. And the reason it gave was that guiltlessness is blasphemous to God. Because to the ego is God. So guiltlessness is blasphemy. To the ego is God. And guiltlessness is blasphemy. Right? And so guiltlessness is the final guilt that fully justifies murder. Right? You can do away with him. He's guiltless. That can't be. Right? So Jesus says, you do not understand that any fear you may experience in connection with this course stems ultimately from this interpretation. So the fear that might build up as I understand the course more and more is because I am realizing, I'm getting closer and closer to the truth that I am guiltless. And the ego is telling you, you better watch it. You better watch yourself, bro. You know what happens to guiltless people. Okay? So we still have that belief resonating somewhere in the mind. Right? It stems ultimately from this interpretation. Right? That guiltlessness must be murdered. Okay? But if you will consider your reactions to it, you will become increasingly convinced that this is so. So he's just telling us, just observe. Just observe. When you get close to the truth, when you get close to that guiltlessness, what happens? Things happen. You run away, you get in an argument, you fall down, hurt yourself, whatever. Right? You cut yourself making French fries. Something happens to take you away and back into the body, back into this conflicted world. Right? He says, just consider your reactions. Right? And you'll become increasingly convinced that this is where your fear is coming from. It's the fear of guiltlessness. Paragraph 7. This course has explicitly stated that its goal for you is happiness and peace, yet you are afraid of it. You have been told again and again that it will set you free, yet you sometimes react as if it's trying to imprison you. You often dismiss it more readily than you dismiss the ego's thought system. To some extent, then, you must believe that by not learning this course, you are protecting yourself. And you do not realize that it is only your guiltlessness that can protect you. Only your guiltlessness can protect you. Right? Last week we learned about the guiltlessness and vulnerability. Right? One of those previous weeks. Okay? Only your guiltlessness can protect you. The atonement has always been interpreted as the release from guilt. And this is correct if it is understood. Yet even when I interpret it for you, you may reject it and do not accept it for yourself. You have perhaps recognized the futility of the ego and its offerings, but though you do not want them, you may not yet look upon the alternative with gladness. In the extreme, you are afraid of redemption, and you believe it would kill you. Make no mistake about the depth of this fear, for you believe that in the presence of truth, you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself. It's just telling us, he's laying it out for us very calmly, and just telling us, just observe, this is what happens. Right? You may not want everything that the ego, you may be tired of the ego and all the conflict and the arguments and the striving and the this and that. And every day is something different. I forget now which illustrious guru it was, and somebody asked him, what's the secret to life? And he said, the secret to life is that it's one damn thing after another. And that's what the ego is. It's one damn thing after another. He says, you might not like that. He says, but you're still, you're afraid of guiltlessness. You're afraid of redemption. You're afraid of the freedom. Right? And you still believe that in the presence of truth, you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself. Right? So just observe yourself and how you react to when you get close to the truth. Okay? And this is the last paragraph. This is paragraph 9. And Ken told us that this was one of Helen Schuckman's favorite paragraphs in the book. Okay? And it's very sweet and gentle. So Jesus says, all right, he's saying that you think that in the presence of truth you might turn on yourself and destroy yourself. All right? So he says, little child, this is not so. Your guilty secret is nothing. And if you will but bring it to the light will dispel it. And then no dark cloud will remain between you and the remembrance of your Father. For you will remember his guiltless Son, who did not die because he is immortal. And you will see that you were redeemed with him and have never been separated from him. In this understanding lies your remembering, for it is the recognition of love without fear. There will be great joy in heaven on your homecoming, and the joy will be yours, for the redeemed Son of Man is the guiltless Son of God, and to recognize him is your redemption. So nice. So beautiful. All right, so reinforcing. All right. He says, your guilty secret is nothing. That guilty secret, oh, I killed Jesus, I killed the Son of God. I destroyed heaven. Oh my God. He says, your guilty secret is nothing. And if you but bring it to the light will dispel it. Right? So what we practice is bringing pieces of that to the light. We bring it to that part of the mind that remembers who we are. We call it the Holy Spirit. We call it Jesus. They are the light. You are actually the light, but you don't remember. So we bring it, whatever it is, and say, help me to see this correctly. Right? We bring all those pieces of guilt until we get to that deep, dark secret. And Jesus goes, look, it's nothing, right? It's silly. Let the light dispel it. And then there's no dark cloud will remain between you and the remembrance of your Father. For you will remember his guiltless Son. You will remember yourself. Right? Who did not die because he is immortal. Right? And you will see that you were redeemed with him and have never been separated from him. In this understanding lies your remembering, for it is the recognition of love without fear. There will be great joy in heaven on your homecoming, and the joy will be yours, for the redeemed Son of Man is the guiltless Son of God. And to recognize him is your redemption. Right? To recognize the guiltless Son of God is your redemption. And we practice that by helping me to see that spark of God in the other. I'm willing to see the innocence. Thereby, I'm willing to see my own. Right? The more we practice that, the more we move into the big aha moment that says, oh, this is who I am. Alrighty then. As the sun fades in the west, all right. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to another session with you. All right. Peace. Bye now.